Content warning. This episode contains discussion of domestic abuse, violence against children, and the murder of 2 children.
For the last few weeks, we have been talking a great deal about the murders of Liberty German and Abigail Williams in Delphi, Indiana. Through court documents and interview transcripts, we have tried to explain why the investigation into those crimes has of late been focused on Tony Kline, the father of Kegan Kline, the man currently in jail facing a slew of charges related to child sexual abuse materials. But who exactly is Tony Kline, and what is he like? We decided to go to someone who knew him quite well, Bart Craning, who was once Tony's stepson. We've been covering the Delphi case, but recently we've sort of gotten on a track of reporting about sort of Tony Kline, essentially, and are just sort of trying to learn more about this person.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I knew him for a really long time, so I'm sure I can at least shed some light on some questions you may have.
My name is Anya Kane.
And I'm Kevin Greenlee.
And this is The Murder Sheet, a weekly true crime podcast.
Anya and I connected over the Burger Chef murders, a 1978 unsolved case involving the killings of 4 young restaurant employees.
Now we're looking to track restaurant homicides. To help us understand the patterns of these crimes, we created a spreadsheet of nearly 1,000 eatery-related killings, the Murder Sheet. We'll be drawing on that data throughout Season 1 to give you a deep dive into undercovered crimes.
We're the Murder Sheet.
And this is The Delphi Murders. Who is Tony Kline? Part 1.
We asked Bart to tell us how Tony Kline first came into his life.
So I met him, my earliest memories as a child, he was involved. I can remember I think one of my first memories is a birthday party when I was a kid, and I remember him being there. So he was married to my mom when I was, in elementary school, all the way up until they got divorced, I believe, when I was in the 6th grade, or maybe heading into the 7th grade. And so that's how I knew him. He was the person that I called dad for at least a period of my time, when I was a kid.
Absolutely. I know in your email to me, you said that he was the worst person you've ever known. And I guess, could I ask you to sort of expand upon that and tell us how you came to realize that?
My childhood was surrounded by fear of him, and because of what an abusive person he was. Physical abuse is what was, brought on my sister, my mother, and me by this guy. And so I grew up thinking that was normal until I saw other kids at other, houses. And I would go over there and I realized things are different. And, I never was a kid that had friends over because I was terrified of what would happen if they were there. And so, I've never met anyone else like him because that was, I spent so much of my childhood fearing him that, to me, I just didn't think there was, anyone worse. And I still don't. I don't have like this hidden animosity where I sit around and I think about what happened towards him. I've forgiven all of that, but I still do, just the things that I witnessed as a kid and the feelings that I had. He is a very, in my opinion, an evil person, I would say.
How does he come across? Like, is it a situation where it's constant violence, or does he have like personality that he shows to the world and then it's different at home?
Yeah, I would say it's a little bit of both, because I do remember him either being diagnosed or my mother saying he was bipolar, and that's the way it seemed to me. He did have this persona that he put forth that was, a nice guy, but it wasn't. I don't think people that would even know him in a day-to-day life, I don't think they're going to think of him as some nice guy. He doesn't hide being that person very well. And at least when I was a child, there was things in public that was physical, not one time. It was more than once. And many of the kids, I think, knew that I had issues going on at home. And it was just one of those things that, I just felt like, I guess I thought it was normal, for a long time, until you find out it's not.
Absolutely. Could you describe sort of the acts of violence that he sort of perpetrated against you and your sister and your mom?
So a lot of times they would stem from just being at dinner. And I remember a plate getting smashed against the wall and spaghetti being on the wall. And that's how I feel like a lot of times it all started, was when it was, maybe it was just when we were together, all gathered around. But, so, I saw my sister throw through a door before. I saw Tony, on top of my mom, physically punching her multiple times. We went to Christmas, Thanksgiving, holidays, and my mom would have black eyes, a broken nose, would be wearing glasses. And it just was not a hidden thing. And so that's really, I think that was mostly what it was just very physical. And he's a big dude, or at least, I haven't seen him in years, but at least he was. And, that's what I remember, is him being much bigger than us and, just punching a lot.
I'm so sorry that you and your family went through that. That's horrific. And to see that as a kid, I'm in terms of how that, sort of also manifested itself, it just sounds like, he sounds like he was sort of a bully in the household. Is that fair to say?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There was no contradicting him whatsoever. There was, if we're sitting in the room watching something in the evening time and you get up to get a drink of water without asking him if you can get up to get a drink of water, then that usually resorted to violence. So yes, he's very, very, if he is not the one making all the decisions, he cannot control himself, in my opinion.
Did he have like a social circle? You mentioned that he had a hard time keeping this side of him under wraps, even in public.
Yeah, I remember a few of his friends. I don't really remember their names, but I remember a consistent few people that he would either go. There was a couple guys that they rode motorcycles together, and they went to like sprint car races together. And so there were a few of the same guys, but I would have no clue what their names were. I do remember their faces and their consistency though.
Right. That makes sense. And did he, with you guys, you and your sister being his stepchildren, did he, was there any sort of attempt at first to make you guys like, I mean, I'm just kind of curious in terms of like, did he try to cultivate a relationship with you at all? Or it almost sounds like it just sort of was awful all around. And I'm just, trying to get a sense of, what that dynamic was.
I would say no. I think he did make an attempt to be, like a father figure, and tried to make an attempt to do things like I remember him coming to football and baseball and things, but in the same time, my last name was my father's last name, my family's last name, but yet with no legal reason, they went to the school and had me use his last name for like 2 years. I was Bart Kline, and that drove me crazy. It drove my dad crazy, and the school just, it just happened. Mom just went there, and that's what my name was, and so that's what it was. And not to blame her at all. This was Tony's doing. He wanted everything about him. And so even though my name was not Kline, I was, for a year of football and wrestling and baseball, I was Bart Kline. And it was this huge thing with all my friends, and my coaches were confused, and I hated it. It was very embarrassing for me, but that's just one instance of his, just where he has to be like the dominant figure,
Right. It's like, forget what my stepson will think or how this will affect him. I need to show my ownership almost.
Yeah, absolutely.
In terms of like, I mean, some of this really horrific abuse and sort of physical abuse, do you know at any point if he came on law enforcement radar for any of that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. When I think I was in the 4th grade, or in between. I think I was going into the 3rd grade. And because we still lived in Peru, and we basically one night, I had a bathroom in my room, and it constantly clogged and had an issue. Hold on one second. My son is right next to me.
I need to take your time.
Just a minute. Okay, I'm back.
Oh, yeah, no worries. And take your time if you have to, take any breaks or anything like that.
Yeah. So, I remember I had a bathroom in my bedroom, and it constantly clogged, and he was always pissed off about it. He was always, mad that he was in there trying to fix it. So that was like basically off limits to me. Well, I think I either needed to go really bad. Maybe it was, for whatever reason I used it, and it clogged. And so I went and told my mom, and he overheard. So he came into the room, he pulled me into the room and shoved my head down the toilet, and then onto the sink, and then out into my bedroom, like tossed me out into the bedroom. And so he went to go grab a plunger, and I just ran out of my room, and I ran out the front door, and it was raining. I don't remember what time of night it was, but it was dark, and it was raining, and I turned left, and I just ran to, I think it's State Road 19 was the closest road, I believe. And so I ran to that corner, and I was just sticking my thumb out like I needed a ride. And this car stopped, and this guy got out, and he comes over to me, and he said, "Bart, what are you doing?" And it was my baseball coach. And he took me into his truck or his Jeep, then went to his house. And I remember there was like a family gathering or something because I remember walking into the house, and there was it just seemed like there was a lot of people there for what would be this house. And they surrounded me, and they were asking me what happened. And then I was telling them. They called the cops. And so Tony went to jail that night, and I went back home. And he couldn't see us I can't remember the exact amount of time, but he had a no contact order with my mom, myself, and my sister. And he did his time that he got on the weekends. So he would go to jail like every weekend for, I don't know the time frame. And then got back, that I was entering, this was over a year's time, I believe, because I think I was going into the 5th grade when he came back into like my life after I thought he was gone for good. And him and mom just tried to work on things. And there wasn't, that I can remember, there wasn't more physical violence after that when he came back the second time, but it was still very demeaning and raised his fist multiple times like he would do it. But I don't remember him actually doing it the second time. And then thankfully, mom just couldn't put up with it anymore. And eventually they separated when I was in the 6th grade. And I don't remember seeing him again after that until probably 3 years ago I saw him. And that's the first time I had seen him since then, since I was a kid. So.
Wow. Jesus.
Can you tell us about where you saw him and what happened?
Yeah, I saw him at the movie theater. I was standing in line. I've even texted a couple of my friends to try to find out who was with me that day, and I haven't been able to find out. But I remember I was just standing in line at the movie theater, and a hand was on, like someone placed their hand on my shoulder, and I turned, and it was Tony. And I kind of recognized him, but I wasn't 100% sure who he was. And I was like, yeah. And he goes, Bart, what's up? And as soon as I heard his voice, then I knew who it was. And like, we were cordial. He acted like he had missed me and that, how was I doing? And he was really said he was proud of me. And that was it. And that was the only time. And then he got back in line, and I turned around and didn't ever think about it, see him again. So.
Jesus. I'm curious, your half brother Kegan, sort of what was their dynamic like, and could you describe him at all?
Well, I know Kegan didn't really, at least on the outside for me, I didn't feel like they were super close, although Kegan almost always lived with them. Once he left living at my mom's house, Kegan lived with him for years. I mean, I think up until he had this, like, he had moved into an apartment in Kokomo, but so he had been with his dad, most of the time. Kegan wasn't one to like speak ill of him, really. I don't know that Kegan even knew really what happened when, like, I was a kid. I surely never told him. I don't know if my sister did or what, but he always knew that I wanted nothing to do with his father. He would have me drop him off, and he would say, "Oh, come inside for a minute." And I'm like, "No, dude, I'm not coming inside. I'm dropping you off at your dad's house and see ya." And, but he would always invite me, and, so I think he at least knew that there was like animosity between the two of us, but I don't know that he knew the extent of the abuse. As far as them being close, Kegan never, like, for me, I always hated Tony with all my, like, everything. Kegan never had that feeling. They weren't super close, like, this is my dad and son. It was more like, this is my buddy, like, this is my friend. At least that was my interpretation of it. Tony wasn't ever like this person that would hold Kegan responsible for anything he ever did. He would never, crack down when Kegan would do things stupid. Whereas, the one moment that any of us bring up anything, why are you doing that? Kegan would explode, and, there's no talking to him, just like his dad was. So,
what kind of stupid things would Kegan do?
Well, I mean, so one time he sent me this picture. It was clearly a photoshopped picture. And it was, this was when he was supposedly living in Las Vegas. and he sent me this freaking photo that was him with like in this environment, like they were out in this desert, and there was these like t-shirt salesman places. It was like being at a band, and they have a bunch of these little venues set up where you can go around and buy shirts. Well, it was clearly a terrible photoshopped photo, and I texted him. I was like, "Hey, what are you doing? This is not you." And he makes up some lie about I'm trying to learn Photoshop. I was wondering if you'd catch that. And so that's a very small version of like the type of lies that we would get, that we clearly know are lies. And, whereas a normal parent would say, this is an issue, we need to speak about this. Like, why are you constantly lying like this? Like, no, Tony, there's no chance that's ever happening with him,
Right. It really sounds like you mentioned like Tony was so controlling with you guys, but you didn't really see that controlling dynamic with Kegan.
No, not at all. And I don't know. I think maybe growing up, I thought I just attributed that as like Tony just becoming a better person, maybe, that he didn't need to treat people the way that he always did. But then, over the years, I heard what he did to his different girlfriends and things like that. So I knew that the abuse did not stop. Kegan knew about that.
Right. And I'm curious, you mentioned like the Las Vegas thing. Do you know what Tony and Kegan were doing like circa 2017? Like, did anything change at that point, or same old?
To be honest, I have tried to think back, like what Tim, I've not had a very like close relationship with him. It's, I think I've been the closest sibling for sure, but like, it wasn't that I would hang out with him on a consistent basis. It's just that we talked a lot about video games and movies and things. And I think I was just there for him to like talk to in general. I'm sorry, what was your question again? I think I got off track.
No, you're fine. I was just wondering if you kind of were keeping track of what they were doing like circa 2017.
Yeah, no, I had no clue. I thought Kegan was living in Las Vegas, and that, for the longest time, like I was astonished when they, like the police and all these people are like, well, he's only been to Vegas for a couple of days and we can prove that. And so that to me, is pretty crazy, because he told our entire family that he was living there for, I thought, like 3 years. I know I didn't see him in at least probably 3 years. And to me, I thought he was in Vegas that entire time, which I'm guessing now it seems like he wasn't. So.
Right. It's such an elaborate lie to put out there. I'm curious, have you gotten contacted by police about Tony or Kegan?
Oh, yes. Yeah. They had my wrong phone number for the longest time. And then when they actually got my number, they contacted me. I went in and met with the state police and the FBI, and we met for like 3 hours, and I just answered all their questions the best I could. They had just a bunch of things about growing up. And that was really what it was, to me, it was like a lot of what happened in this regard, can you remember these dates? And that's what I just was honest. I said, yeah, this is what I know about what happened when we were growing up. And that's pretty much what they asked me about exclusively.
Do you get the sense that they think that perhaps Tony was involved in the Delphi murders?
Well, they wouldn't tell me that. Like I asked multiple questions, and they wouldn't answer any of mine, obviously. Like that's just typical. But I thought that the vibe I got from them was, yes, they thought Tony was involved somehow.
Do you believe he could be involved?
I mean, I don't want to believe that, because it's horrific things, and it is very hard to comprehend that number one, my brother would be involved, but number two, his dad. Like, I have no idea. I hope not, and that's it is what it is. You know, I will say, if people could do it, then yeah, I mean, Tony is a person that I absolutely believe could lose his mind and kill someone, because I have seen him on the brink of, like, what I felt like was going to be death around me, you know. So if you're like 150 pounds bigger than someone and you can like mount them and just punch them in the face repeatedly, you're not that concerned about their well-being. And so, would I think if he is the type of person that could do it? I mean, hopefully I don't know any murderers in my life, but he seems like, at least the rage factor. Yeah, I think he could kill someone.
Did he ever threaten you or anyone you know with like a knife or anything like that? Or did he own knives?
Yeah, absolutely. Weapons were just a normal part of it's whatever he had handy, whatever was closest reach. Didn't matter what it was. Baseball bat. He threw a computer, like an old desktop computer, at me one time. Ripped it right up from the ground. And this was because he was installing a racing game on the computer. It was an old Gateway. And he was installing a game on that computer, and it didn't have enough RAM or something, and it wouldn't run. And so I tried to explain that to him, that you would need an upgrade in order to run this game. And he absolutely snapped. I tried to sprint out of the room, and he grabbed the entire desktop, ripped it up with the cords and everything, and threw it at me down the hallway. And so that's like that. Weapons, yes, that was anything around. Yeah.
And he was a hunter. Is that right?
Yes. He always had lots of guns, lots of knives, hunting and racing, and that's literally what he cared about. Motorcycles too.
Wow. Yeah, geez. And this is a awful question, but I have to ask it just because of some of the stuff we've heard. I mean, did he ever sort of indicate an interest in underage girls or anything like that? Anything sort of sexual misconduct, stuff like that?
Yeah, not to my knowledge. I mean, and I would be honest, I don't give a shit about the guy, but I don't remember anything with, little girls, or if anything, he seemed like a typical, like the typical response when you hear about pedophiles. He would give the typical one where, they need to die in prison and things, which that's pretty much what everyone says. That's the only thing that I can ever remember him, saying about any type of children.
Right. That makes sense.
You talked about the anger inside Tony. I was curious. Did you ever see that kind of anger inside Kagan?
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
I mean, Kagan's just a big, angry guy. That's how he has always been. He's been... His way of dealing with things is a lot like his dad's, unfortunately. I don't know of any time he's ever been physical with like women or, anything like that, but Kagan will be, the first person to absolutely explode on you for no reason whatsoever. I mean, in like a tirade, and it's just he's an angry guy. I've always just known him as being a pretty angry kid. So
for Kagan, what was his did he have relationships with girls his age, or what was his deal with girls, I guess, growing up?
I mean, to me, it's like he never had any girlfriends that I can remember. He had a couple different girls that he dated that I can remember coming to Christmas a couple times. I remember him having a girl there, but nothing ever long term that I can really remember, other than the one he was with, which I don't even remember her name, but the girl he was with was most recently. But she I don't remember how much younger she was, but she looked very, very young. And I brought it up to my mother that, how old is this girl? Like, are you kidding me? She looks like she's 15 years old. And, mom didn't like it either, but the girl was 18 or 19, I guess. And so, that's the only girl that I remember him long-term dating, and they ended up living together, and, they were together for quite some time. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, how has this been for you and your family at this point? I mean, it must be awful since the thing, everything's gone public with Kegan in particular.
Yeah, it sucks. And this was so selfish of me, but the first thing I thought of when he got arrested was, thank God we have different last names. But I mean, I have a job that I have an appointed position. And so things it's like in this day and age, you can lose your job for anything. And so I don't want to be affiliated with someone that is clearly going to go to jail for a very long time for minimum, all the horrific things that they're saying he has done. So, it's been really hard to it's been hard to think about it for my mom, because for me, like, I don't have my actual Bart name out on the internet really at all, only for my job, so anything I do, I'm not on Facebook, social media, or anything like that. So I haven't seen all of everything, but my friends update me, about how many times things are shared and just how many people talked about him when it first got announced. And yeah, I mean, to me, up until the day he got arrested, it's like he was my little brother that I've known my entire life and that you love and you want to, take care of when things go wrong. And then even hearing the things and then hearing it from the police, and then just some of the things that I've even, talked to him about, it's really weird how it's weird how it affects your thought process towards them. Because yes, Kegan's still my brother, but it's really hard to even think about. He has a phone in jail. They can text. They can text people. Sometimes he'll text me, and it's about the basketball game or something, and I never want to respond, and I feel so bad about that. But that's the way that this has made it feel to me, is that even my brother could have, you feel like you've been lied to, your entire life, all these things. I felt like him and I were fairly close regarding things, and to know that this is what was going on behind the scenes is really hard to deal with.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. And I mean, geez, I can't imagine also, as you said, what your mom's going through right now.
And then I had a question. You talked about hearing Tony's voice at the movie theater a few years ago. I was curious. I assume you've heard the audio of the person on the bridge saying, "Guys down the hill." Did that sound like it could have been Tony to you?
No, it didn't.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, he has a very kind of high-pitched, weird voice. It's not deep at all. So yeah, I did not think it was Tony.
Did it sound like Kegan?
It did sound like Kegan. I will be honest. I'm just going to be honest. I did. It did sound like him to me. Yeah.
Gosh. Did they either of them go to Delphi ever? Was that some place they would have hung out or knew about?
I mean, I really didn't. At the point Kagan got arrested, we had not, like, heck, when the cops originally called me and asked me, I didn't remember when the last time I had even seen him. I had only seen him a couple times since he got back from Vegas, and I would have no clue if they do anything over in Delphi. I mean, we grew up right near Delphi. We grew up in Cass County, and so we've all been familiar with that area. I mean, we fish around there quite often. We did when we were kids anyway. Well, he was much younger, but when I was in my high school years, we'd fish back around Burlington in the Delphi area and Wildcat Creek. And so, yeah, we'd have knowledge of it, but I have no clue what either of those two were doing when they got back,
I want to jump to the Vegas thing, because I think that's super interesting, like this elaborate ruse of, I moved to Vegas, by everybody. Do you remember like how that came up? Was it like sort of sudden, or was that something where like they were, okay, a month from now I'm going to be going to Vegas?
Oh, yeah, no, it was planned. He has told me, like, he's told me so many different things that are just astronomical, like things that are where he's told me he's purchased land in other states, and I'm like, dude, you barely can pay your rent. How'd you do this? And so I always learn to take things that he says with a grain of salt, but at the same time, yeah, he was very open about our plan is to move to Las Vegas. He told me he was working at a place where they grew weed and delivered weed, and his job was basically to pick it up and deliver it to these people, like whenever they ordered it. And so he, as far as I knew, was doing that. And then he was going to school to be a blackjack dealer, I guess. He told me he was doing that. And he was working at some casino where they were training him to be a blackjack dealer. And then he was also told me he was working at a warehouse where he was like carrying a gun and patrolling like this big weed warehouse. Like he said his only job was to be on this golf cart with a gun and that he had to patrol around. So like these are the different stories that I would get. It was totally planned. It didn't seem spur of the moment to go to Las Vegas. And then when he said he was gone, I mean, we thought he was gone,
Right.
I stopped seeing him, so,
Yeah, why would you think different? I mean, he says he's going there, maybe you're like, okay, he's exaggerating about his work, but you could assume he's probably there.
Yeah, and we don't live in the same town. We don't work. I've never known him to have a job, so it's like I wouldn't have seen him like running into him. So, yeah, I don't know. It was definitely weird.
This is a weird question, but did Tony, did he always work at the Kokomo transmission plant? And I mean, what was his financial situation when you were in the same household as him?
Oh, all that guy ever talked about is how much money he made. Yeah, I remember one time the police officer came and knocked on the door when we lived in Young America. And there was this old beater car, this blue car he kept around. I don't remember what for, but he hardly ever drove it. But this cop came and said, knocked on the door, and I answered it, and Tony was mowing the yard. And so the cop kind of walked out towards him. Tony hopped off the mower and met him in the middle. And the guy was like, "Sir, we've had a report of this blue car being involved, or a car that looks like this being involved in like stealing gas." And he like flipped on this cop and was like, "I made $93,000 last year. Like, I don't need to steal gas and blah, blah, blah." But yeah, so back then he worked at Chrysler, as far as I knew, the whole time. Maybe still does. I don't know. But, he he always talked about how much money he had.
Right, absolutely. And did he always work third shift?
That's a good question. I really don't know. When I was a kid, I seem to think he would always be home when I got out of school. So it makes sense if it was third shift. I wouldn't know, though. I can't remember.
Absolutely.
I had a question here. We happened to get a copy of a part of a transcript from when the police were questioning Kagan right after he was arrested. And I wanted to read just a small part of it to check something with you. One of the officers says, we had this case a while back. This little kid was in the bathroom and overflowed the toilet. So he yells for help, and the dad gets pissed off, comes to the kid. Mom intervenes. The dad punches the mother. She runs away. He chases her down, hits her, bites her in the stomach, runs back inside, slams the kid's head into the toilet, fractures his orbital socket, puts him upside down, and starts dunking his head into the toilet that was overflowed. That sounds like the incident you were describing. I just wanted to confirm, is the child in that story you?
That was me.
And they say to Kagan, what do you think should be done about that guy? And Kagan said he should get hung right now. He should be killed.
Right, yeah, I didn't know that. But yeah, that's me. I've never heard that.
How does it, I mean, gosh, I listen, we really appreciate you sort of talking with us about this, and we're sorry to bring up like bad memories around this. We do appreciate you kind of speaking with us.
Yeah, it's not as hard as I thought it would be, to be honest. So
yeah.
Maybe it's good.
I hope it's a little bit cathartic to talk with someone about it. I mean, I saw that.
So you said?
Oh, sorry. What were you going to say?
That transcript, was that read to Kagan? Was that what you said?
He was being interviewed by the police, and they wanted to. They told him that story, and they said, "What do you think should be done about this guy? What do you think he's capable of?"
Gotcha. Okay,
it just sounded like that was basically the story you were telling us, and I just wanted to confirm that it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, we got a hold of some of those transcripts, so we're doing a few episodes based on that, and then we're going to kind of continue to cover this angle because we believe that the transcripts indicate that law enforcement is very serious about the sort of looking into Tony Kline in regards to the Delphi murders.
I mean, with that, I think you're on the right track there, because that sure seems that way to me too, from that statement you just said.
That this must be surreal to sort of hear about some of this bad memory from your childhood sort of coming up now in a police transcript with, a kind of a high profile case up there, investigation and whatnot.
Yeah, that was really weird. I mean, just hearing you say that, or hearing Kevin say that, was, I kind of got chills. I was like, whoa, you never think about that stuff being written down, like, to me, it was just like what happened, and I can barely remember. I just remember like a few parts of that night. But yeah, somebody wrote it down and like took a statement, and it's filed away. I don't know. Never thought about that.
Those injuries sounded really horrific. You broke your orbital socket?
Yeah, I still have a little bit of you can't really tell, but if you feel it, you can feel it a little bit. And then the back of my head, I always had like a second cowlick, back there, but it was basically from a scar. Now I shave my head anyway, so it don't bother me. I don't remember being injured though. That's weird. Like I remember going to the hospital, but I don't remember them doing anything. Like I remember just meeting the police officer. I remember getting in the ambulance, meeting the police officer at the hospital, and them just talking to me in the room. But yeah, that's all. And I didn't remember that until you read that. That's odd.
About how old were you when this happened?
So that was the last year that we lived in Peru. So I would have been in the third grade is the final year there. So however old you are when you're in third grade, that's how old I was.
Wow. To think about doing something like that to an 8-year-old, kid, that's just horrifying.
Yeah, it's awful. Yeah.
You mentioned sort of like Tony sort of not, because I think this is something a lot of our listeners will be like, what the hell? Or, just that we're thinking probably right now, this kind of abuse being an open secret, was there, did anyone, other than that incident where police were obviously called because you were injured and that was so horrific. Were there other attempts at intervening almost by anyone over time, like in sort of trying to stop the abuse?
I remember one time that I think I alluded to my mom being beaten up by Tony, and my dad just got really, really angry. And he, when Tony came to pick us up after our weekend was over we were done with the weekend for my dad, then I remember him going out there, and I believe a couple other people were out there, and they kind of surrounded Tony and, threatened him and told him they better not hear that he is being physical with my mom or me. But I think that made it worse, to be honest, because I remember when we left, Tony never said a word to me like the whole ride home, and I was terrified about that. I was like, oh my God, he's not talking at all. And then I don't remember anything like coming out of it, but I do remember thinking like I should not have ever told my dad that, I remember regretting it because I felt like it was going to make it worse. And I don't think it was an open secret with most people. I think it was more just like my friends, a couple of the friends that I told, and it was definitely with the family. All the family knew, like all of his family, which was the only family we were even allowed to be around. He basically blocked out my mom's side of the family where she was not allowed any contact with anyone on that side. And so we only saw his side of the family. And like I said, we went to Christmas, Thanksgiving, mom had broken nose, black eye, and I remember her telling his mom one time about this happening, and she was just like playing it off like, oh, it'll get better, and like it's gonna be fine. He just gets angry sometimes. Like they just totally put up with it, which was the saddest thing, because even though like my mom had enough strength to go to her and say, hey, something needs to be done, to just have that door just shut in her face, and then of course you feel like you have no way out at that point.
Right, because you've been cut off from all your friends and family.
Right.
That's awful. With Tony's dad, Jerry Kline, I think he died recently. What was he like? Do you remember?
Very nice man. I liked him so much. Although I heard he was harder to deal with than what I remember. I remember hearing he had a bad temper, but to me, Jerry was such a nice guy. He was very loving, very grandfatherly. He took me multiple places. He would buy me books because he knew I loved to read. So yeah, he was a very kind man.
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, is there anything we didn't ask you about that you wanted to say or wanted to sort of express about this whole massive, crazy topic or anything like that?
No, I don't think I have anything to say. I just, I flipped through like the scenarios of like who would be upset with me if I said anything, or if I didn't be anonymous. And like, I have no reason to be anonymous. I have no reason to like I don't care who is upset about what I've said. And, I've just been honest about what happened when I was a kid. And if that makes Tony look bad, then so be it, because he is a bad guy. So, that's it. And if you guys, find out you want to have another question, if you want to email me or talk to me again, that's fine. This was not as hard to do as I thought. I kind of was nervous earlier, but it's been kind of good, actually.
We would like to thank Bart for sharing his story with us. If you or someone you know has experienced domestic violence, please reach out for help. You can call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 800-799-7233.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Murder Sheet. As always, thanks to Kevin Tyler Greenlee, who composed the music for The Murder Sheet, and who you can find on the web at kevintg.com.
To keep up with the latest on The Murder Sheet, please make sure to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Murder Sheet, and on Facebook at MSheet Podcast, or by searching Murder Sheet. If you enjoy listening to The Murder Sheet, please leave us a 5-star review to help us gain more exposure. And send tips, suggestions, and feedback to murdersheet@gmail.com. Thanks so much for listening.